nocks on this thing and string it up. So this happened when I was originally cutting this bow out, and you'll notice that there's basically a chip out of the end. So what'll happen is if I bend it and this is exposed, like say I put the nocks up here and this flexes, it's gonna basically snap right here and peel off. So what I have to do is I need to basically carve this down. So I got to clip the tip on this end, which is okay. I mean, it kind of is a bummer, but I'll probably cut it like right about here, and I'll leave a little bit of this because I'm not too worried about it busting out at the nock. But I just wanted to show you guys that. Other than that, I do have some splits at the very end from working at Green. So I'm just going to take my knife and clean those up a little, clean the tips up, and then I'll go ahead and I'll walk you guys through how to put nocks on it and stringing it and string tillering. Alright guys, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to clean the ends up. And you could do this with a rasp, but for the sake of time, I'm going to use my pocket knife. And basically all I'm doing is I'm trying to get rid of the splits that developed on the end from when I originally broke this, or split this piece of wood. And I'm going to lose a little bit of length here, but that's not the end of the world. Pretty short bow as is, so a little bit shorter isn't really going to change the performance all that much. Okay, so I got this end cleaned on up. Let's see. And I know you guys can't exactly see what I'm doing here, but you'll just have to trust me. And here's that end I showed you a close-up of. I'm just gonna cut it. I'm gonna literally cut the tip off of this one. So I got the tips of the limbs all doctored up here. Now my next step is going to be scraping the side of the bow. And the goal here is to get it really nice and smooth, because before you bend this thing, you don't want there to be any like weird cracks popping off, kind of like this one right here. Those can cause a lot of problems and can actually cause the bow to break. So it's important to kind of smooth everything out, you know, maybe even give the back of the bow a light sand, and just make sure that this bow is ready to bend. Now when you're scraping your bow, you can use a few different tools. The back of your knife will work really well if you have a good 90-degree spine. You could also use a cabinet scraper from the hardware store. So when we're nocking our bow, the main thing we want to be careful of is not violating the ring in the front of the bow. So basically you never want to gouge or cut into the back of the bow. So when we're nocking, we're really just focusing on putting nocks for our string to stay where we want it to stay. Many different types of bows throughout the world don't use nocks, but for us, we will be using nocks. And the biggest thing to look out for is you don't want to gouge out the front of the bow. So you're basically only using your knife or your chainsaw file on the sides of the bow. Another thing that people commonly do is they make their nocks either very, very shallow or very, very deep. If your nocks go almost through the entire limb, the limb will be prone to snapping at the nock. So I'll go ahead and show you mine. And then if your nocks are really, really shallow, what'll happen is when you shoot the bow, the string will actually pop off, and that'll cause a whole bunch of stress on your bow and can basically, ruin the bow if you're not careful. So here's a close-up of our nocks. You'll notice they don't violate the back of the bow here. And whether you put your nocks, at the very end or a little bit in, that's totally up to you. I like to leave quite a bit of space so that I can sand this area down and make it fancy and look cool. Some people do inlays, all kinds of fun stuff. So that's how you nock a bow. Very, very simple. All right, so I got a string on here, and it's not, the bow isn't strung, so to speak, it just has a string tied on each end. And the reason I do this is I put it on there loose, I put my foot where my handle is gonna be, and I just gently flex the bow. And what I'm looking at the tiller right now. I'm seeing where is it bending, how is it feeling, like draw weight wise. And right now, the feedback the bow is giving me is telling me that it needs to have more wood removed. It's telling me this is too stiff for how short this bow is, and we need to take a lot more wood off. Not only that, but it's not really bending here, it's not bending much here, it's mostly just bending where my foot is, which is telling me that it's very likely it would snap right now if I were to actually string it and try and shoot an arrow. So, we got a lot more work to do on this. As you can see, it's still fairly green just from holding it like that. It took a set. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna continue to remove wood off of here, and we'll give it another go here in a little while. Get it strung up again like this and see how it's looking then. Today we learned how to season our stave to avoid any cracking or checking. We learned that our profile should be symmetrical in order to create a predictable bend. We learned to avoid to have any major gouges in the back of the bow and to look out for splinters on the side of the bow. So we scrape the bow with the back of our knife on either side to create a nice even smooth surface and to remove any of those splinters where the grain may be running off the side of the bow. We talked about tillering. We nocked each end of the bow and put a string on it and began string tillering. We know now that this bow needs to have more wood removed. It is still fairly green. When we did bend it, it did take a really heavy set, also known as string follow. That is when you bend the bow, and then when you stop bending it, it is the same shape as when it was bent. And so we know we need to remove more wood. We know we need to let it dry out a little bit more. And other than that, I think it's going to make a really great bow. And we'll be back for part 3. In part 3, we'll talk about how to make a string, We'll talk about the final tillering, getting it strung and doing our very final string tillering, scraping and finishing the bow, oiling the bow, and lastly shooting the bow. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and or subscribe to my channel. I've got a lot more exciting projects coming out and I'm learning more every video. I'll be back and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.